I served a pregnant woman a non-alcoholic cocktail. I was working at this upscale restaurant downtown, the kind where people come for anniversaries and business dinners. It was a busy Friday night, and this couple walks in. The woman was obviously pregnant, maybe 7 or 8 months along, wearing this flowy blue dress. Her husband seemed nervous, kept checking his phone and looking around like he was expecting someone. They got seated at one of my tables in the bar area. The woman orders first. "Can I get a mojito, but make it virgin? No alcohol. Standard request. I make virgin cocktails all the time for pregnant women, designated drivers, whatever. No big deal." But then her husband leans over and whispers something to her. She shakes her head and says louder, "Actually, make that a regular mojito with rum." I pause. "Ma'am, I can definitely do that, but I just want to confirm. You'd like the alcoholic version?" "Yes, that's what I said." She seemed annoyed that I even asked. Here's where it gets tricky. Legally, I can't refuse to serve alcohol to someone just because they're pregnant. It's not against the law, but morally I felt sick about it. I'd been reading about fetal alcohol syndrome in this health class I was taking, and the pictures were haunting. I made the drink, but I couldn't bring myself to put the full amount of rum in it. I probably used about a quarter of what I normally would. Figured it was a compromise. She gets what she ordered, but the baby gets less damage. 20 minutes later, she orders another one. This time, she specifically says, "And make sure you put enough rum in it this time." I could barely taste it. My stomach dropped. She knew what I'd done. I made the second drink with the normal amount of alcohol, but my hands were shaking the whole time. Then things got really weird. About an hour into their dinner, this older woman shows up. Turns out it's the pregnant woman's mother-in-law. The moment she sits down, the pregnant woman, I heard them call her Jessica, starts acting completely different. She's louder, more animated, and orders a third mojito. The mother-in-law looks confused. "Jessica, should you be drinking?" "Oh, these are virgin," Jessica says, holding up her very much not virgin mojito. "Just club soda and mint." I'm standing there frozen. Do I say something? Do I correct her? The mother-in-law is looking at me, and I can tell she's starting to piece things together because she can smell the alcohol. The husband jumps in. "Yeah, she's been really good about avoiding alcohol." "Haven't you, honey?" Jessica nods and takes another sip. The mother-in-law's face is getting redder by the minute. Finally, the mother-in-law gets up and walks over to the bar where I'm cleaning glasses. "Excuse me, but are those drinks alcoholic?" I freeze. I can't lie, but I also can't throw my customers under the bus. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't discuss specific orders with people who didn't place them." She stares at me for a long moment, then walks back to the table. 5 minutes later, she's having a hushed but clearly heated argument with her son and daughter-in-law. The whole thing escalates when the mother-in-law stands up and says loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "I will not sit here and watch you poison my grandchild." Jessica starts crying. The husband is trying to calm everyone down, and I'm pretending to be very busy wiping down bottles. Other customers are starting to stare. The mother-in-law storms out. The husband throws money on the table, and they leave right after, with Jessica still sniffling and muttering about how his mother always ruins everything. But here's the kicker. About a week later, the husband comes back alone. He sits at the bar and orders a beer. And after a few minutes, he says, "I need to tell you something about last week." Turns out Jessica wasn't actually pregnant. She'd been faking it for 3 months to try to save their marriage after he caught her cheating. She was wearing one of those fake pregnancy bellies you can buy online. The whole thing was falling apart, and she was planning to fake a miscarriage in a few weeks. The mother-in-law had been suspicious for weeks because Jessica kept doing things pregnant women shouldn't do, like eating sushi and soft cheese. The alcohol thing was just the final straw that confirmed her suspicions. She confessed everything after my mom left. He told me apparently she thought if we were having a baby, I wouldn't divorce her. She didn't expect my mom to be so involved. I just stood there with my mouth open. All that guilt I'd been carrying about serving alcohol to a pregnant woman, and there was no pregnancy at all. Story. When I visited my dying daughter with my wife, my little girl whispered, "Dad, look at my back." I lifted the sheet and froze. The doctor stepped in, checked her scars, and quietly called the police. My wife tried to run, but the truth was already out. What followed exposed years of hidden cruelty and became the most heart's unforgettable justice I have ever seen. Chapter 1. The visit we almost missed. It was supposed to be just a routine business trip. I was in Atlanta, 3 hours from home, preparing for a quarterly client presentation when I got the call. The hospital, my daughter, intensive care. They said she collapsed at school, respiratory failure. Her teacher had called 911, and by the time the ambulance arrived, her pulse was faint. She was 8 years old. I don't remember what I told my boss. I don't remember leaving the building or starting the car. I just remember the trembling in my hands as I drove, and the silence in the passenger seat where my wife Miranda sat with her arms folded and her face turned toward the window. She hadn't cried, not once. Not when they called. Not during the drive. Not even when we reached the hospital and the nurse told us she's stable but critical. You can see her now. The cold room. The ICU smelled like bleach and death. Machines beeped in slow rhythms and the fluorescent lights made everything look pale. Even the walls. Even the nurses. I walked into my daughter Lily's room and nearly dropped to my knees. She was so small, so still. So unlike the bright-eyed, giggly girl who used to wait at the door for me every evening, holding her latest crayon masterpiece. Her lips were dry, her arms were banded with purple bruises. I reached for her hand, and for a second I thought she wouldn't respond. But then her fingers twitched, and in the faintest voice cracked like old porcelain, she whispered, "Daddy, I'm sorry." "What do you mean, sorry?" I looked at her through the fog of confusion and heartbreak. "Sweetheart, you don't have to be sorry. You're going to be okay. We're here." "I'm here." Her eyes flicked toward her mother, standing near the doorway, staring at her phone, and then back to me. She tried to speak again, but the oxygen mask choked her breath. She motioned for me to come closer, and then she said the words that made my stomach twist. "Dad, look at my back." I blinked. "Your back." She nodded slow, the way someone does when they've been carrying a secret for too long, and finally can't anymore. I glanced at the nurse, who stepped out respectfully, and then at Miranda, who rolled her eyes and muttered something about being dramatic, but Lily's eyes, they were pleading. So, I reached under the sheet, gently turned her onto her side, and froze. Chapter 2, The Scars She Hid. The first thing I noticed was the discoloration. Faint yellowing at the edges, some new, some old. Then the angry purple stripes. Linear, parallel, intentional. The kind you don't get from falling down the stairs. The kind that aren't from playing rough or being clumsy. Like Miranda always said, I blinked hard trying to process what I was seeing. Her back. It looked like it had been used as a punching bag. My heart slammed into my ribs. I looked up at Lily, her face wet with silent tears. Who did this to you?" She didn't speak, just slowly turned her gaze toward the doorway where Miranda was standing, still expressionless, not surprised. I stood there frozen, my mouth dry, my breath shallow. And then the door creaked open. A doctor stepped in. A tall, calm woman in her 40s. She was holding Lily's chart. But the moment she saw me leaning over my daughter, her face changed. She walked over, gently pulled the sheet back up, and then said quietly, "Can I speak with you outside for a moment?" The quiet accusation. In the hallway, I was shaking. I don't even know if from rage or horror. The doctor shut the door behind her and said carefully, "Mr. Jensen, were you aware your daughter had these injuries?" I shook my head. "No, never. I travel a lot for work. My wife stays home with her. I never saw." She nodded once, not surprised. We documented multiple bruises in various stages of healing. The patterns are consistent with repeated physical abuse. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. We've already notified Child Protective Services. A social worker is en route, and depending on your living arrangement, we may also need to contact law enforcement. Then she lowered her voice. "She told me something before you arrived." She said, "Mom says I have to be a secret." My throat went dry. The hallway swam around me. The flight response. When I turned the corner back toward the ICU, I heard the noise. Footsteps rushed sharp Miranda. She was halfway down the corridor, pushing past a nurse, her purse slung over one shoulder. She didn't even look back. I called out. She didn't stop. By the time I caught up to her at the elevator, her eyes were wide. Not with guilt, not even panic, just fury. "You should have stayed in Atlanta." I stared at her. "How long?" She didn't answer. "How long have you been hurting her?" Her jaw clenched. "She lies. She always lies. She's manipulative just like you. You don't know what it's like raising her alone. Always needing, always crying." She stopped. Realized she said too much, too loud. A nurse turned. So did a security guard. That's when Miranda ran. She bolted down the hallway like a thief, heels clacking, hair whipping behind her. The security guard followed. The nurse was already on the radio. And me? I stood there realizing that the woman I married, the woman I trusted to raise our daughter, had become a stranger, a monster. But this wasn't just about punishment now. It was about saving Lily and making sure no one ever hurt her again. Chapter 3. The Police Report and the Puzzle. The police came within the hour. 2 officers, one young, one older, both with the same grim expression people wear when they've seen too many homes turn into crime scenes. The older one, Detective Harper, asked me to step outside Lily's room while the nurse stayed with her. Miranda was already in custody. They'd caught her in the parking garage trying to start her car. I sat in a quiet corner near the vending machine, clutching a paper cup of stale coffee I hadn't touched. "Mr. Jensen," the detective began, "I know this is difficult, but we need to establish a timeline. Has your wife ever shown anger issues toward your daughter or anyone else?" I rubbed my forehead. "She's had moods," I said slowly. "Controlling, short-tempered, but nothing like this. I swallowed hard. I thought she just got overwhelmed. And your daughter never mentioned being hurt." I shook my head. "No, but she's been quieter lately, flinching at sudden noises, refusing to sleep with the lights off." I asked her about it once and she said, "Mom gets upset when I talk too much." Detective Harper wrote something in his notepad, then looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Sometimes the silence tells us everything." The puzzle pieces begin to fit. Over the next few hours, fragments of truth began to fall into place, like puzzle pieces snapping together into a picture no one wanted to see. The school nurse arrived to give her statement. She'd noticed bruises before, faint ones. And when she asked Lily, the answer was always the same. "Mom says I fell," the teacher added her part. Lily often came to class tired, withdrawn, always checking her phone for messages from her mother. Once she'd drawn a picture for an art project of a small girl behind a door with a red figure standing outside it, yelling. They'd all suspected something, but no one connected the dots until now. The doctor's discovery. Later that evening, the attending doctor came out with an update. Lily's stable, but there's evidence of prolonged stress, not just physical trauma, malnutrition, sleep deprivation. She's been living in fear for a long time. I pressed my hands over my face. My voice cracked when I asked, and I never saw it. I never noticed the doctor placed a hand on my shoulder. Abusers are experts at hiding what they do and at making their victims hide it for them. The file detective Harper returned with a folder later that night, Miranda's preliminary statement. He hesitated before handing it over. "You may not want to read this now," he said quietly, "but you deserve to know." I took it anyway. Inside were pages of cold mechanical sentences, excuses dressed as explanations. He was always gone. She didn't listen. I was disciplining her. It's not abuse if it's love. Each word was a blade. I closed the folder halfway through and whispered, "She doesn't get to call that love." The twist in the timeline. Then came the final page, the one that made everything twist sideways. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten by the social worker who'd been assigned that night. Note: child mentioned being left alone often for several days while mother visited a friend. Possible witness: neighbors may confirm visits to 118 Brookfield, a property owned by father's name. I blinked. My name. I didn't own anything on Brookfield, but my wife did in her maiden name. It wasn't a friend she'd been visiting. It was another life. Chapter 4. The house on Brookfield Lane. Brookfield Lane was 15 miles from the hospital, a winding stretch of road lined with whispering trees and aging brick houses. The kind of place people forget exists until it's too late. I followed the detectives in my own car, heart pounding like it was trying to outrun the truth. When we reached the house number 118, it was exactly as I feared. Not empty, not abandoned, but lived in. And not by me. The door that shouldn't have opened the house was under Miranda's maiden name, a quiet purchase 3 years ago. The mortgage paid monthly from an account I didn't know existed. Detective Harper knocked twice, then signaled for his partner to flank the side. A moment later, the door opened. A man, maybe mid-30s, with a smug, lazy expression, leaned against the frame. "Can I help you?" "Police. We need to speak with anyone residing at this property." The man's face twitched. "Miranda's not here right now." My blood turned to ice. He knew her name. He answered casually like this was normal. "The hidden life." The living room looked lived in. A glass of wine on the coffee table. A pair of heels by the couch. A photo frame flipped face down beside the TV. While the officer spoke to him, I wandered. I shouldn't have, but I did. In the bedroom there were clothes, perfume, a robe I'd given Miranda 2 Christmases ago. In the corner, a small dresser. I opened the top drawer. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to my love. None of them to me. She had been staying here regularly while I was home with Lily, cooking dinner, folding laundry, waiting for a wife who said she was working late. She was here with him. The man's name was Curtis. She told him I was emotionally abusive, barely present, and that Lily wasn't really her responsibility anyway, just a burden she was stuck with. The closet revelation. The most damning twist came not from the letters, but from the closet. Behind the coats there was a box. Inside, 2 cell phones, a small notebook, receipts dated months back for hotels, for overnight spa visits, for plane tickets. One of the phones had text still on it from Lily. "Mom, I don't feel good. Mom, I think I have a fever. Mom, please come home." And Miranda's reply, "I'll be back tomorrow. Don't wake your father." The evidence of neglect. Back at the hospital, Lily had suffered from untreated infections, poor nutrition, and emotional withdrawal. Here in this house, there were $800 designer handbags, a fridge full of imported wines, and pre-cut fruit trays, and a schedule taped to the fridge. Monday, Curtis's place. Tuesday, home, check on Lily. Wednesday, Curtis. Thursday, girls' night. Friday, Curtis. Saturday, Sunday, Curtis. Lily with sitter. She had organized her entire life around not being a mother. Harper's words. Outside, as officers sealed the property and took Curtis in for questioning. Harper looked at me. This isn't just abuse," he said. "It's abandonment. Willful, repeated, documented. She's going to face real charges, Mr. Jensen. Prison time minimum." I nodded slowly, but my mind was already elsewhere. Not on the charges, not even on the lies, but on Lily. Because while Miranda built a second life filled with comfort and secrets, our daughter had been alone, suffering, waiting, silently surviving. Symbolism, the broken frame. As I left, I picked up the photo frame from the living room. I turned it over. It was a photo of Miranda and Curtis on a cruise. Her smile was blinding. His arm wrapped tight around her. I didn't throw it. I didn't shatter it. I simply placed it back on the table upside down where it belonged. Final Chapter 5, The Trial and the Truth. The trial began 6 months later. By then, Lily's hair had grown back from the stress-related shedding. She still flinched at loud sounds, but she smiled sometimes now. Soft, genuine smiles that made the nightmares worth it. She lived with me full-time. Therapy 3 times a week. The same stuffed rabbit she clung to in the hospital still slept beside her every night. The doctor said she was recovering better than expected. But scars, physical and emotional, don't vanish. They mature, and that's what this trial was really about. Not revenge, not punishment, truth. The courtroom Miranda walked in wearing a gray suit and that same practiced poise that once fooled everyone, but not this time. The room didn't see a victim anymore. They saw the mask she'd worn, cracked, transparent, empty. Curtis wasn't there. He'd taken a plea deal for obstruction and left the state. But Miranda, she wanted to fight it. She took the stand, voice trembling, pretending tears. I loved my daughter. I just didn't know how to handle her. My husband was never home. I was alone. I made mistakes, but I'm not a monster. The prosecutor stood calm as glass. Then explain the schedule, Mrs. Jensen, Monday through Sunday. Your handwritten routine for avoiding your own child. She froze. The prosecutor slid the paper across the table. The same one from the Brookfield fridge. Explain the bruises, the starvation, the infections, the photos of you on cruises while your daughter begged you to come home. Miranda's lip quivered. She turned her gaze toward me in the gallery like I might save her one last time, but I didn't move. Because some moments require stillness, and this was hers, the final witness. Then came the moment that silenced the courtroom. Lily. The judge had allowed it. A closed session. Minimal audience. She was small on the stand, her voice barely above a whisper. The therapist sat beside her for support. Lily, the prosecutor said gently, can you tell us what happened when you were home with your mom? She fidgeted with the rabbit in her lap. She'd get mad when I called Daddy. She said I made her tired sometimes. She said I ruined her life. Did she ever hurt you? A long pause, then a nod. She said it was to teach me, but I don't know what I was supposed to learn. The judge's pen stopped moving. The courtroom air turned heavy. Even Miranda's attorney bowed his head. When Lily was done, she looked toward me and smiled. Small but free,